Okay, we are live. I'm joined tonight. Well, it's night for me. It's 9 p.m. here in Wisconsin. It is 3 p.m. where Samuel is, way across the oceans. But let me align the planets as we get started.
And you said you had no tricks up your sleeve.
Well, this is the trick of the whole series.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because Samuel has things planned, and I have nothing planned. And I wanted to start by reading the email that Samuel sent. I had watched, oh shoot, the four videos. Do you have four videos on your channel?
I think I've got three, and I talked to Paul Vanderklay as well, and
Three.
Cornelius actually. Yeah, the fourth
Yes.
one's coming. Ish.
Fourth one's coming. A conversation with the corners PVK and the corners Grim Grizz, both of which are fantastic. And I've been starting a campaign to bring the podium back. And I'm hoping the podium's going to
Yeah,
come back in the fourth video.
yeah. Half of it might. I'll need to find a way to integrate it. Half of it's gone forever.
So, this is the email I received. No title. Hi, Ethan. You worry me a bit because we deal with logic and narrative in different ways. But are you interested in talking at some point? The only difficulty is that I do not know what to talk about with you. So I have left the subject of the email blank. Samuel.
Yeah. So to sort of explain that, I was looking at, it seemed to me that when you talk, it's often very narrative framed, or it's trying to bring, like, trying to work everything together, or go with the flow of it almost. Because I see, like, when people talk about I don't know what you call them, just the words people associate, art is often yes and, right? Whatever comes before, you find a way to go with the flow. It's almost complete in that sense. Like, almost anything that's come should be able to be artistically integrated. Whereas reason is usually actually, it's no actually. It's like, it's always, it usually has this pattern of just contradiction, stopping, de-animating even. Like,
Huh.
yeah. So it might be something where we might have a recursive loop or something where you sort of frame the living thing, and then I turn it into an axiom to stop it, and then you look at the axiom and say, hey, it could be alive in this way. Yeah,
Okay, before we go any
I'm not
farther,
sure.
I'm going to
Oh, momentary sound drop.
of
And we're back.
feedback. One sec.
Okay.
Okay, while we were away, we completely solved the difference between narrative and logic,
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
we're just going to close up shop.
Yep, sounds good. Or actually, we're going to go back to where we were, because we're talking about the difference between like yes anding, which continues the flow of everything that was coming before, and the no actually, where what you're trying to do is almost destroy and replace, and then you just hold that spot in this more static way, right? Like Newtonian mechanics basically destroyed the models that came before it, and they've had very few alterations. They're still mostly there now. And so, you know, like on the one hand, when I sent that message, I was thinking, like, in terms of generation, like, beauty is about generation, logic is about destruction. But I think
Hmm.
that's not actually, in my second thoughts, I was thinking that's not actually completely true because, like, both in art and in logic, you are removing the potentiality of all the other things that could have been each time you
Ooh.
give a form. So they're both about both destruction and generation.
Removing the potentiality
Yeah. So
with
like,
art,
okay.
I feel like I would say art is almost more like bringing the potentiality into actuality. It's like something is
Yeah.
blooming and growing, and now it's like it was chaos, and now it's an
Yeah.
orderly beauty.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
with
So like,
logic, I would just say no.
yeah, it's not like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm sort of viewing art too harshly with like, well, actually, there's 20 billion pictures you could have painted and you only painted one. But then it's more like, well, there was nothing here and now there is something. So it's like, I think the experience of art is more creative, or like it's more generative, let's say. Whereas the experience of logic is more like, in logic you're more doing process of elimination, right? Like you're trying to,
Mm.
like the way you think is you look at all of the other potential options and destroy them one by one. Whereas with art, that's just not how you're thinking about it. You're sort of like, well, what do I want? And you put something in and you put something in. It's sort of this additive process.
I don't know. I mean, when I sit down to
Yeah.
write something, especially if
Yeah.
I'm writing poetry,
Mm.
I mean, there are so many words I'm choosing from and then
Yeah.
crossing them out one
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
one until only like the right
Yeah. It
word
is sort of
is
deletive.
left. But it's not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's intuitive. It's my gut. My gut is
Yeah. Yeah.
talking. My rational mind, when I'm writing poetry,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need
You should
to
have shut up.
quiet it. And
Yeah.
I used to just drink a lot of whiskey and do it. Um,
Yeah.
and I haven't written poetry in a long time, and I haven't been drinking the way I used to. And
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, I kind of have to like relearn how to write poetry because
Yeah.
my old trick is unavailable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, there was sort of that still deleting thing in there. So it's probably not as simple as. So then, like, if it's not the additive deletive, not the potential, not like, yeah, then the other aspect I was thinking is maybe it's then eternal temporal, or sort of,
Mm.
yeah, something's beautiful because of the moment, because of the context, and because it's sort of, you're trying to incorporate a lot of stuff, you're incorporating even the things which are only in the moment into the flow of it. Whereas logic is usually like, well, actually, this should be eternal as long as these premises are accepted. Maybe.
What's your favorite kind of logic? Like
Um.
how do you apply logic in everyday life, or like when you sit down to do logic, what form does that
Yeah.
take? Because like for me, it's like
Um.
I can be like, I write a poem, and somebody goes, "Oh, sure, I know what a poem is," but for you to be like, "I'm gonna do logic," what is that?
Um. Usually, it's like, I think I could call it non-verbal. It's like subverbal.
Hmm.
So like, I look at things and I do it in my intuition and my subconscious, and like when I'm thinking super hard, my my inner monologue sort of dries up, and yeah, it's like more this primal sense of networks of alignments. So like, I need, yeah, or like I'll draw like a little diagram, and I'll just stare at the diagram, right, and just keep staring at it while I wait for like the subconscious to start arranging itself into a more crystalline structure.
I mean, you could be describing the process of writing a poem right now.
Well, they're both
You
going to
sit
have
down.
alignment, right? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I need
So
to,
how do you align? Because maybe it's more in
because the
how does
problem is
the
they both
thing
use
get
truth.
aligned?
Yeah. So I think, right, for logic,
We're doing like
right,
the
yeah,
phenomenology of poetry and logic right now.
exactly, because they both use. Okay, so I think I might have accidentally been talking about truth instead of logic specifically, right? Because truth is the alignment network, and both beauty and reason and like even power and stuff all rely on this sort of alignment network that's sort of underneath. Logic is usually when you like, right. I'm not sure. I'm getting lost now. Right. I
So
need to check my notes. Yeah.
okay,
So
will you
keep
check
talking.
your notes? Let me. This is something that I've been thinking quite a lot, and
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
there's more than like the the titles of the sections don't matter as much as the category descriptions. But for the last year, I've been thinking about like what is a human being,
Yeah.
and to the best of my understanding, a human being is like a triadic structure. I like body,
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
soul, but then there's also a oneness that is separate from the three or the wholeness of the three.
Yeah.
And I like the word spirit, but there's different traditions and different people, even within the same tradition,
Yeah.
that
There's
will
a lot
have
of ways you can say
4
it.
different words.
Yeah. Ooh.
It's just going to keep doing this. My StreamYard hates me. It's a fun
Yeah.
game we
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Oneness and the oneness, I think, are perhaps undeniable. And I even think it's interesting that
Wait, the witchness and the oneness?
the threeness.
Oh, yeah. I think you could deny the 3 and like go 2 or 4 or something for human.
Well, you could, if you went 2, you'd go
Or
Descartes.
20. I could go like 50. Like, you know, it's like, no, actually, right? Like, I think if I want to, I could just look at all the different like cognitive functions and be like, well, actually, your visual stimulus, your visual perspective, your memory perspective, your taste perspective, your like all of these different ones are all getting stitched together. Your like intent perspective.
Yeah,
Right.
and then I would wait for you to write all those out, and then I would draw
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
circles
Yeah. Yeah.
around mind, body, and soul.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But like,
But
I've figured out the difference between logic and art.
okay, one
It's
second.
about like,
Just because I think that art comes from the soul, and I think logic comes from the mind, the rational part of the human, and the body is the place where rationality, the mind, meets the soul and poetry.
perhaps I don't fully understand that, but yeah. Logic is about power, control, dominion,
Hmm.
like domination, mastery. It's about grasping down, encircling, closing off potential. Beauty and art is about it's about offering hope, like it's more sort of spiritually. It involves spirituality, which is like raising things up or offering things up. You hope somebody accepts your art. You insist somebody accepts your logic.
Is God logical?
It's a very artistic question. I think that
Does
it's
does
not that simple. It's not that
does
simple.
God force insistence and demand power?
Um,
'Cause
yes
I'm
and
not.
no.
I
Like
don't know.
not absolutely. But this is one of the things, right? Like, if you see gravity as the hand of God, that's fairly insistent. But if you see, like, praising Jesus as like the act of God, that's less forceful, right? Because we are, it's our will, right? Like, our human will is always sort of in the middle. There are things which we see as above us that we hope towards and offer towards, and there are things we perceive as within our grasp, under our will. Like, I'm not like I don't feel the emotion of hope when I use my fork and stab it into the food, right? I just expect that it will obey my intention. Like
Unless you're
yeah,
eating ice cream with a spoon, then
yeah, yeah,
every spoonful is hope.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There are exceptions, but normally, like when the exception arises, it would be more like my world has shattered, right? I'd be like, oh no, it's a disaster.
Do you feel like you are more logical than anything else? Like, is logic important to you?
Um, yeah, I think logic's important. But it's also, I would say, what's really important to me is communication and translatability.
Hmm.
And logic also has a very high translatability. Like, because, because it's sort of more obvious, because it's not complete, because you've got it does a lot of context removal, right? Like, part of controlling it is being able to manipulate it and move it anywhere you like from one context to another. It's like cutting it off from its context, cutting it off from the movement, and so you can just move it from one place to another wherever you like. Like sending a math equation to a guy in Pakistan who understands it immediately, right? Because it doesn't need the context; it's been cut off from that. Yeah, and if I like being understood, but my internal context is very different from other people's internal contexts, I need to put a lot of effort into decontextualizing my language.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if the person you're talking to is a bad listener. The the cutting off part resonates
De-animated.
with me. Yes. Because it's almost like you were born into the world and the world is this whole thing full of wonder and mystery and adventures to be had. And then slowly but surely you like cut off different parts and you like name things and
Yeah,
you take a part from a tree and then you have this thing and you can build with it. And poetry is, and most art, not all art, because art can be,
hmm.
exceptions, but most art is usually about the wholeness of a thing. And
Yeah, yeah,
even if I'm talking about part of a tree, usually my intention is to talk about the whole of the tree by talking
yeah, yeah,
about the whole part of the tree, which is that
yeah,
fractal sort of
yeah. Like, you give the
macrocosm,
part
microcosm.
meaning, but the meaning is related to the other things it's connected to, so it sort of informs the whole shape, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. And before we started, you were talking about logic as de-animating,
Yeah,
which is so interesting because, well, what do you mean by that? Why do you say logic is de-animating?
because I stumbled across some definitions when I was doing some logical thinking. right? Where animus is movement, and sort of it's like a shorthand for life. The thing which moves is alive. But then what happens when you do maths is you like your number to stay still, right? You want an 8 to be an
Mm.
8. But then when something starts moving, the number starts moving. Oh, its position is 8 meters away, 9 meters away, 10 meters away, 11 meters away. And then in maths, you're like, I can't have this. I can't have my number just changing. And then you look around every possibility and you find, okay, if I divide the position by time, I get a constant number again. I'm saying now it's 1 meter per second, right? And so I've searched the whole universe to find the exact operation to stop the movement from happening, to deanimate it, to make everything look still. Because only when it's still can you sort of do the logic on it. And like every type of movement pattern, you're like, okay, well, is there any way to frame this so that the numbers don't change anymore?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of framing things, I love the piece of art behind you. Is that Van Gogh?
Yes. Yeah. Just wanted some color.
I love Van Gogh. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there is a staticness to what you're describing with that deanimation. That's so interesting. Like you said, I don't want the 8 to move around. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you wouldn't be able to do math if it was always in
Yeah,
motion.
exactly. You can't do maths at all.
So it has to be frozen and static. And then for art, the hope is that it becomes dynamic and full of
Yeah.
breath and life, and that
Yeah.
almost that it is subjective and moving around. So even
Yeah.
the meaning of a poem cannot be captured and then like, this is the thing. You're like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
it's this today and next year it'll be something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And you like it almost if people have slightly different interpretations. Like they might have
Oh, yeah, because if everyone knows what it's about, that's terrifying.
like it's
Because,
boring. Or like
well, no, it just means they know my secrets. I try to like hide my
yeah,
secrets
yeah.
in the.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way.
What is the most artistic part of you?
Is it going to annoy you if I say my logic?
Well, earlier I said that there was logic in my poetry, so yeah, I want to hear how there's poetry in your logic.
Yeah. Um, because the thing you can do with logic is you can be like, okay, I'm just going to find the most absurd set of premises that's ever existed, and then rearrange everything so that it sort of coheres again, right? Like, okay, find for me a definition for why, like, a cat is a type of Oreo, right? Like, explain to me how a cat is a type of Oreo. And I'm like, okay, I can do that in a consistent way. Give me 40 minutes and I'll just like come up with some kind of explanation.
Okay, so why is a cat a type of Oreo?
I need 40 minutes.
That's fine. We got 35. I mean, we'll just sit here and watch you. So how much writing are you doing when you're doing logic? Because earlier you mentioned that it's like subconscious, you're sitting and thinking. Is it more of just you kind of doing that like sort of metacognition where you're going up into your mind somewhere and walking strange halls of a memory palace?
I don't know exactly. It was a question, how much writing am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, are you writing? Are you thinking? Are you taking a walk?
I do want maybe an hour a week of writing, something like that, or just like one paragraph, and then
So most of doing logic is
thinking.
thinking.
Yeah, yeah, I do a lot of thinking.
Do you do it in the same place? Do you have a
Not
thinking
necessarily.
chair?
No, I like to walk, so I'll just walk sort of wherever, up and down, or round and round, or off to a place and back.
Do you ever
Ooh, sound.
pace back and forth in a room?
Constantly.
That's how I used to write sermons a decade ago.
Ah,
Is I would walk back and forth and then like find the opening usually and kind of build them sentence by sentence
yeah.
until I got to the end. And usually like 18 minutes was a sweet spot. And then I would have pretty much the whole thing memorized because I had just endlessly repeated it by pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, so how different are we then? Because I said
Um,
there's a logic to my poetry, and you've said there's a
the
poetry to my life.
poetry to my logic.
And it
Yeah,
sounds like
well,
we're doing more similar than different things.
somewhat, but it's inverted, right? Because, like, my words are sort of. I think I mostly speak in a more axiomatic way. So it's sort of like even if I'm like poetry with logic and logic with poetry are like opposites in a way, right? They're sort of the inverse of each other. Like because the poetry needs the structure, but you can't. But logic needs a bit of fun sometimes.
You very early on started talking about truth
Hmm.
and networks of alignment.
Yeah,
And if you want to stay on logic, we can.
yeah.
But I would
We mainly finished.
really love to hear you talk more about the logical axiom of networks of alignment.
Um, so this is about principle or like first principles, right? Like I've I built a metaphysic in which it is viable to treat to treat phenomenological experiences as first principles. So, like, I can treat the sense of touch, the sense of sight, as like the first principle you can start building everything else off of. And then so I sort of just would explore my mind, and it's like, actually, the process of figuring out the truthless alignment was a lot longer and was pretty hard because it was sort of there's all of this stuff about correspondence and coherence, but they're sort of all external. They're not perspectival. But the thing they have in common is that they're both about lining things up with other things, and that this is
Mm.
also like there's also a lot of more archaic words for truth which are like that as well. Like true meaning like a straight or a square sort of structure, or like flying true means flying to where you aimed it, or like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and also like because a lot of it is trying to get around words because a lot of the postmodern criticisms of truth are very linguistic, right? It's like, well, is that just the word water, or could you call it like aqueous, or could you call it like which is it? But then the alignment is actually a lower layer than that. You don't need words to know what alignment is. Like if I say I'm going to hold up four fingers, I create an expectation, and either I could like meet it or I could like break it, right? And it's really that sense of sameness. But like even a gecko could have that sense, I reckon. Like it could look at two sheets of paper and think, oh, those are the same kind of thing, and then look at a bug and know that that's a different thing. So like sameness and difference is the sense of alignment, and that's at a much more primordial layer than language.
Was this in your video? The sameness and difference part?
I thought it was implied. No, no, it's sort of like
You thought it was implied?
this is the problem, right? I always write like 2 sentences, and then I'm like, oh, everybody can understand this. You just need to think about it a bit. It's like,
Okay, because you just said sameness and difference is more primordial than language.
yeah, much, much more.
Please talk more about that.
Like, like,
I don't know.
so, okay. So how do I talk about it then? Like, if a gecko gets used to eating the red ants, it will attack the red ant the same way each time because it sees that it's red. And
Yeah.
if it sees a different shaped bug, it might take a different approach because it can see that the different bug is not the same as the red ant. So, like, connotation requires the sense of sameness. Like, to even have a connotation, you have to have a sense of consistency between one thing and another. Because it's all about like how definitions work. There's a big misunderstanding as well to do with language, where definitions are all bounded, or it's sort of like everything inside this box is one thing. You go 1 millimeter across the border, and now you're in something else. Whereas in function, most definitions are center of mass based, where like we we think of yellow. Well, what is yellow? Well, it's mostly sun color. What is green? Green is mostly plant color. And then yellowish green or greenish yellow doesn't actually matter 99% of the time. Like the exact border between yellow and green is usually irrelevant. Sometimes you want lime green or something, but normally you don't.
Unless you're writing poetry.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe. Or maybe not. Most of the time it won't matter in poetry, but some poems it might.
You said in function. Is that computer logic? What is function?
I don't know. When did I say it? I forgot that I said it.
I thought you said we think of definitions as bounded sets, and then
Yeah.
I thought I heard you say in function they're
Oh,
actually, or do
oh
you
yeah, well,
mean
like, I mean,
in the function of
how,
life?
I mean, like, yeah, in the function of how our brain works. Normally we're actually using a center of mass or like a distance from a known point. So it's sort of like, well, I know what color the sun is. How far away is this color from that? Right? We're not actually thinking, okay, here's the exact boundary between yellow and green. We're thinking, I know what color the sun is. I know what a plant is. Which one seems closer? I'll use the closer word.
Which is hilarious because I'm thinking about a box of Crayola crayons and you pull it out and it's like sky blue. So even like,
Yeah.
or robin's egg blue, even the names of the crayons are using the natural world as a reference point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I
I
don't
want to
know
go.
so.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, I was wondering if that's to do with the history of dyes or with the phenomenology of the human mind. Because it could also be just like, okay, we got this type of blue by crushing cobalt or whatever. So we called it cobalt blue.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if you could make. I guess you could make a dye out of a robin's egg,
Yeah,
but that's
probably not
kind
those
of
ones. You can't make
sad
one
to
out of
think
the
about.
sky.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I want to go back to the gecko eating the red ants
Yeah.
and sameness, because the word that was leaping out of the screen at me that you didn't say was the word
Oh no, the sound dropped the critical word.
pattern. The word
Pattern.
pattern.
Ah, yeah. A pattern is a complicated network of alignments, usually. You need, like, quite a few. Yeah, you need, like, probably like 5 or 6 alignments to make a pattern.
And an alignment is an experience of sameness.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
And
like it's a distance minimization, right? Like, yeah, alignment is when you have minimized a gap or a root or something. Like if I minimize the gap between my finger and the eye, almost, or eye line.
so if you minimize
Wait, no,
enough,
that's not quite true. But go on.
well, say if you minimize enough gaps in reality, then you have a pattern which is somewhat based on repeatability.
Yeah, I was just going to say it can also be a maximization, but yeah,
What do you
yeah,
mean
you
by
can put it.
maximization? Say more about that.
Um, like, I'm not sure. It's just a different definition. I think it's getting confused. Let's go. I've got it confused. Let's go on with what you were saying. So,
Well, it's so interesting to me that because I've been thinking for the last 4 or so months about how to define what a pattern is. Part of that is because like the name of my Substack is
yeah,
patterned by design, um, which was less intentional than it perhaps might seem. Um,
it's almost like synonym, isn't it? Like a pattern and a design. Not quite the same.
so the reason I've never told the story or written the story, so this is fun. The reason it's named what it is because uh, the way I understand the Bible is through design patterns, which
Oh yeah,
I think comes from a guy named, I think that's Robert Alter, and
okay,
the Art of Biblical Narrative. I think that's the right book.
yeah,
Um, and it's this weird thing where, I mean, it's basically like hyperlinks,
yeah,
essentially, and you
yeah.
can
So
look at a
big
word
players.
and you have this, like, you have a library. The Bible's a library, but then all of the different authors, to some degree, and it's not even authors, but it's like scribes, multiple scribes, like this dense network of writers hyperlinking each other, or you could use like a Kanye rap, like sampling each other.
Yeah.
They It's this dense design pattern. Um and I love, but I didn't want to say design pattern. And I was like,
Yeah.
pattern by design. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Uh, I do think it sounds cool. I like the word patterned with an ed on the end. So yeah, for you to say that a pattern is a collection of alignments or a series of alignments, it's really interesting to me.
Yeah. I was just almost thinking it's like, to me, it's just like, well, a pattern involves a bunch of lines. Or like a repeating thing is a sameness, a sameness, a sameness. And a pattern has a repeat. And then usually you'd have a structure to the thing you are repeating. And the structure is made up of a couple more alignments. Yeah.
Yeah, but like even in that structure, like if we go to like the gecko eating red ants,
Mm.
I assume there's some sense that gecko is eating these ants because other ants are poisonous, perhaps,
Yeah.
or these ants it figures out has more nutrition, keeps it full of
Yeah.
energy for longer, taste good,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Or
like
it just
there's,
knows where to get them.
yeah, there, and but that even knows where to get them is like a densely complex task.
Yeah.
And I guess this part feels
And
very
it's
like,
easier. So
no, go.
I'm just saying, like, yeah, because tasks are complex, it's easier if you've only got to do them one time, right? It's easier if I like don't have to come up with a new hunting plan for each ant I see, and I can just use the same plan for every red ant, just over and over again.
Yes. And then you were talking about minimizing gaps. And that was interesting to me because I was thinking about how full of gaps reality is. And how, in order for us to do anything, our body, everything about us has to cover the gaps, which is like create patterns just for us to like look and see things.
Yeah, by gaps, do you mean unknowns, or do you mean like?
You use the word first. I don't know. What do you mean?
Wait, did I say gaps? I don't know what I said gaps. Maybe
Yeah,
I did.
you said minimize gaps, and then you said
Oh,
maximize, but then you were like, I don't want to talk about
oh, okay, no,
maximize.
no. Oh yeah, this is a great example of the thing I was wondering might happen, where we sort of turn the axiom into the flower, and then it's like
Uh,
back to the axiom. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So like minimizing gaps. Oh, that's very, very. That sounds pretty difficult because you're talking about like gaps, sort of almost on a human scale,
well,
and then like when you say reality is full of gaps, like a materialist would be like, what do you mean it's full of gaps? There's
just the
like stuff
vision system,
everywhere.
just the vision system, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if we don't see everything, right? Like our
Mm.
brain, our eyes, just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cut
True.
out
Yeah, we can't see
parts,
behind us.
and so that is minimizing gaps. There are
Yeah.
gaps, and like in order for us to function, that gap has to be minimized, and I have to not even
Well,
know
they have
there
to
is a
be
gap,
filled.
which isn't unknown.
Yeah, yeah. Some types of gaps I think you'd want to fill rather than minimize. But then, like, what are we talking about? I think our memory does a lot of that, right?
Yes.
Like, you sort of have your memory, it creates expectations, and you just assume the expectation is true because looking is too much effort. Then, yeah, something like that.
Well, I think minimizing a gap is the same thing as filling a hole.
Oh,
I dare you to no actually me on that.
okay. So since you dared me, um, so I'd say in the strict alignment sense, you are drawing the edges together to make an alignment, which is different to replacing which is different to filling in the void.
Hmm.
So they're both ways of minimizing gaps, but one of them is to completeness and the other one is to alignment. I tend to think logic is deeply incomplete. Like, for example, the thing I've been thinking about, like the equation x plus y equals 3, right? X plus y equals 3. You cannot find one value for x.
Hmm.
It could be anything. You could say, well, the question doesn't work, or x is any real number, or the answer is unknown. Like, and when you use a logical analysis, almost everything is like that. Like, there's usually just not enough information to like, oh, what's going to happen with AI? I'm like, well, by logical analysis, there's like 10 million ways it could go. Like, I don't know. But then that's why, logic isn't, you can't just use it alone, right? Because sometimes you need to fill the gap in. And so, like, well, right, oh, yeah. I'm conflating my definition, two definitions of gaps, but whatever, it's more poetic this way. Um, yeah, so you need to use multiple lenses of analysis generally. Because, yeah, there are lots of, like, there's a lot of times you need to have, like, some type of future to live towards. You can't just say, I don't know, right? Like, someone asks you, oh, are you sure? Can you logically prove God exists? Well, logically, I don't know. Well, you're going to be in church on Sunday, right? Like, saying I don't know doesn't help you decide if you can get to church on Sunday or not. And so, like, it's pretty easy to get paralyzed when I use logic too much. It's sort of like, well, there is no way to do it. I have to flip a coin. I have to make a random decision. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like the endless use of I don't know, my brain goes like straight to nihilism. Where like nihilism is this sense of nothing is known. Everything is an I don't know.
Yeah.
And the only thing left is like pleasure. Because pleasure is known no matter what.
Yeah, that's why I think sort of faith comes first. Or it sort of is the lower, like, you know, like, what's it? There's the Munchausen trilemma, or also called Agrippa's trilemma, which basically says you can never justify anything fully, so you always have to kind of just assert some sort of premise. And if you don't assert any premise, you just don't have anything, which is like nihil, which is zero, which is nothing. So, like, you do need to assert some premises in order to have anything. But, like, if you use reason, like, let's say if I assert as my first premises all of the phenomenological reality, right? I assert that yes, light is bright, shadows are dark, my mouse has mass, has weight. Like, you know, then I can get somewhere. I don't have nothing. I have some stuff, but it's not like complete.
Is that what you were saying earlier? Because you were talking about building out of metaphysics. Are you saying that the phenomenologic experience is what you put forward as your first principle?
My first principle is I don't use matter, I use definition. So I say, okay, the definition is the concrete part. You could frame it that way. Or like definition, image, form, the reality, the concreteness, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing. How do you start with a definition? Because a definition is a collection of words. What is a word? Do you have a definition for what a word is?
I have a definition for definition.
Bring it.
So I defined definition as the connection between that which defines and that which has yet to be defined. So this is also known as like perspective or measurement and potential or the unknown. So that which defines hits that which hasn't been defined yet and creates a definition.
I mean, that takes me straight to the first chapter of Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like your definition of definition is like the line between chaos and order.
Maybe.
Because essentially, like, to create something is to bring order to it, which is to like gather up an armful of words and be like, here we go. And then around that little bit of order is endless chaos. The chaos never, it's just a sea of chaos. And that is like Genesis 1 verse 2 is over the chaotic seas. The Spirit of God hovered.
Yeah. I'd say I tend to think that there's a huge amount of sort of this unknown, this chaos, this potential in the world, even more so than like they thought in the Middle Ages or whatever. like, because you have to use a frame of reference, right? Like, and everything that's outside it by the structure is not defined yet. So, like, if we take the example, like the smallest example is like a blue light sensor, right? I'm asserting that what it's like to be a blue light sensor is that your whole world is blue. Everything is blue. Just the experience of blueness in the present, in the moment, to greater or lesser extent. You don't have a memory, you don't have an ability to predict the future. Like, it's always just fully in the moment, and it's always blueness.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that if that's the bottom layer, then everything that is not blueness exists as chaos or potential in that frame of reference for that blue light sensor.
Okay, so you start with a definition of definition,
Yeah, and this is
and
a
then
model to explain it.
how do you progress from there? Do you start defining things? Do you start walking around the garden and naming animals?
Yeah, that's probably a sensible way to do it. Well, really, you don't actually start. Starting is a bit of a cursed word, or like it's a backwards word for what a metaphysic is. Most people don't need or use a metaphysic ever. Metaphysic is a way to compress your justification so you don't have to keep making up different things all the time. Like, we walk around and we see animals and trees and stuff automatically, right? Like when you're a little kid, you see that. But metaphysics is only when, like if a toddler asks you, well, why is the chair there? Oh, because it's made of wood. Why is it made of wood? Because it came from a tree. Why did it come from a tree? And you like that series of questions will lead you to, you know, like, do you want an answer for that? I can say, well, why is the chair there? Because it's a definition. Why is it a definition? Because it's a definition. Like, so that's how it's defined. That's how we defined it.
But why did we define it that way?
Because that's the nature of the perspective we have to want to define things with. Like, these series of questions can't be grounded properly. They always end up in like, the other answer, the more traditional one, is, why is the chair there? Because it's made of matter. Why is it made of matter? Because matter just is. Matter is because it is, because it is, because it is. Like, well, what is matter made out of? Matter's not made out of anything. Matter just is. Like, there's no satisfying answer. So you take your pick between the unsatisfying justifications, and you can contest between them on some other things. Like, you can say, oh, this one's a bit prettier, this one's works a bit better with Occam's razor. But yeah.
Okay, so part of me wants to start asking questions about spirit, but
Yeah.
you mentioned you had thoughts about the quest for holy Techne, which I feel like we should start moving that direction.
That's a good idea.
And I don't know where this is going to take us. And at some point, I will ask you the final question, which will end this. But that could be 30 minutes away. I'm not sure.
Okay. So I guess, like, there's a sense, I think there's an eternal or static sense where I was thinking holy and Techne are almost like a direct contradiction. But then, because it's to do, but like in the mobile sense, I don't think it necessarily is. Because you were talking, it's like, could you give your definition of, like, what you meant by Techne?
Well, Techne is a very, very old word for technology. And in the like ancient sense, it has this idea of like craft to it. So like there are these things that like human hands craft and fashion, and then they become like tools, and these tools we use somehow like extend us beyond what we're naturally capable of.
Yeah.
And today we think of technology as like the microphone, the computer, the light bulb, but
Yeah.
like the the,
The
the
pencil.
wood the wood here is a Techne. This keeps the noise of the dryer on the other side away from me, and I don't like the noise that dryers make, so it's a great Techne.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess like the separation that I think, I'm going back into the separation between control and sort of offering that I was thinking before, where like so the question I was wondering is this sort of a question about asking for the proper sacrifice? Is this sort of a question about what kind of thing that I can grasp, or like what is the proper way to take something I can control and offer it for the better, for the good or for the holy, or to the holy in some way? Like, what is the correct form for sacrifice? Or is it sort of the other question, which I think would be sort of more the heresy one, would be like, what is the thing I can control? What is the way to master divinity? Right? Like, how can I get a handle? How can I dominate? How can I domineer the divine itself? And like, I tend to think the answer is you probably can't.
You said, which question is it, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing a question mark.
Quest for the holy Techne. Question.
Yeah, that's an adventure. Are you doing?
Oh no.
Are you adding letters?
I don't know. I just assumed they were the same thing.
Your logic, it's quest for holy Techne. It's a nice little axiom. Don't be adding flowery language now.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The question that you posit and the thing you're putting forward is not every episode, but there have been a number of episodes, especially recently, the last few, that have kind of been walking this line between like magic and miracle.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
I think that's like the meta question. You're going like, is this a miracle? Is this a gift? Or is this a magic? Is this grasping and taking and domineering and
Yeah.
But I think in some sense I'm trying to understand like what's the difference between FaceTiming someone and astral projection? Because FaceTime is repeatable.
Yeah.
You repeat that.
Yeah. The feasibility, the controllability, in a sense, you could say.
I know a guy that that you talked to in TLC who, when I talked to him, that one time he astral projected his face into his friend's kitchen. And I'm going like, did we just figure out how to use ones and zeros and electricity to like harness spirit and perform repeatable tricks? Which sounds insane. That I'm going like, maybe FaceTime is just like repeatable astral projection.
I think it's different, but it is massive power. It is incredibly powerful. The phrase, like God telling Peter, kill and eat, right? Like all these animals that were unclean, God sort of shows them to Peter and is like, kill them and eat them, right? like there is a lot of power or like determination of how things work, which is being given to us. But I think that spirituality is the context sense. It is the it depends. It's the you had to be there-ness. Like so, it's sort of inherently unrepeatable. And the instant you grab it, it's not actually the act of grabbing separates it from the context. When you grab a fairy, it kills the fairy. It like
Mm.
the act, yeah. So the action of control itself makes something non-spiritual. Like even if it's the same type of action that somebody might have used spirit to do before, once you gain control of it, you turn it into something secular. Like and going to the like even to the whole divine stuff, like part of the joke about the social order or the sacred social order stuff where people have been talking about a bit is like, you know, imagine there's a native tribe of people or something. They say the river is this incredibly powerful god, you should not anger it. It's this, you know, this holy thing, you fear it, you tremble at the river, and you hope it doesn't hurt you. And then these Europeans come along and it's like, okay, that's your stretch of river. You can believe whatever you want, but over here we're going to build dams, canals, we're going to like fill the river with poop, then take it out again. We're going to like twist it up in knots and make it do literally everything we want. We're going to make a water park. Like we're going to do all of this, but oh yes, you can still tremble in fear at the sight of the river over at your stretch. We haven't interfered with you at all. Like that's not how it works. Like like the
What's
act
not how it works?
you can't tremble in fear at something that's so obviously under your dominion. Like
So you're saying the river is obviously under human dominion?
yeah, like if they sort of see the river as this unbelievably powerful thing, and then you come up and you just completely dominate it, their world, their social order, their sacred social order is being contradicted, right?
Mm.
Like how they have aligned their power, their sense of what power is with the world around them, is being visibly contradicted right next door. So like, you know, yeah, even if you don't kill them, some part of the world is being shattered. I don't know how I got onto this bit. Yeah, control is important for social order as well. Just the sensation of control is very important for it.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, in January, I read Heidegger's essay, The Question Concerning Technology. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was like the hardest thing I've read in a long time, where I'd like sit down and like take notes on basically every paragraph and write a series of like point, sub point, sub point, just so I could like make sure I was following the argument. Because I was like starting to read it and I was like, I don't think I understand this. Like I'm reading it, I'm comprehending, but I'm not understanding. So like I took notes throughout like the whole 40 pages and was like,
Yeah,
oh. And then I really wanted to write an essay or two on it, and I haven't started at all. I think because I know it's going to take me a long time, and I don't have that long time to write about it,
yeah.
even though I really want to. Um, but one of the things that comes out of that is he talks about a dam. Oh, I'm not going
Yeah.
to do this very well. But there's one little part of his argument where he talks about how humans have turned nature into a standing reserve. So this sense that like there's the river and we're going to go over and like harness the river whenever we want,
Yeah, we'll bring
and
it
the
back
river
to
will
us.
just be like a subject of our will.
Yeah.
And as I was reading this, I was thinking about my 8 to 5 day job
Mm.
and how I don't work the full 8 hours because there's not 8 hours of work, but I
Yeah.
have to stand there because I'm a standing reserve.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm to be called upon, then I have to
Yeah.
just, I'm chained to the desk to be called
Yeah.
upon.
Yeah.
Whereas if I worked from
Yeah.
home,
Waiting thing.
it would only take me, 2.5 hours to do all of the work
Yeah.
necessary to complete the tasks.
Yeah.
But we've structured our world in such a way that it's built on standing reserves.
Yeah. It's sort of your will. You've given up a certain amount of stuff to the company so that it says, well, you'll do it when I ask you to, as opposed to like just being efficient and doing it at your speed. Like you lose control of the pace almost. Right, standing reserve. I've missed a point.
Well, and
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I remembered that. Okay, like one of the problems with modernism and like this whole idea of the separation of man versus nature is that we forget that the city is also an ecosystem.
mm,
That like that like we are also sort of natural and we kind of bring that with us inevitably in some ways. Like bacteria aren't going anywhere. Like yeah, like a farm is not unnatural exactly. It's a different type of ecosystem with human involvement. And yeah, I think people get confused about that sometimes. But yeah.
what do you think is the confusing part?
Um, the separation doesn't work.
Hmm.
Like, there's all these places where, like, these random animals, they're adapting, they're moving in, they're getting used to cars, they're getting used to people, right? Like, there's all this sort of stuff, and it's going to keep happening. And, like, you know, it's sort of like, and also, even the places we consider wild, like, they're somewhat under our control anyway. Like, we have chosen at least not to burn them down, right? Like, so we still have in like like it's a good approximation saying like, okay, this is the area where we are more in control and that's the area where we are less in control. But there's not a clear distinction between man and nature. Even within ourselves, it's sort of like, okay, well, my will clearly decided to talk to you today, but like my breathing is much more just natural than that.
Mm.
And like we have all these different layers and gradients of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'm thinking about is like the eruption of the wild, both
Mm.
at like the cosmic scale of an asteroid coming our way,
Yeah,
or the national scale of a flood, or the personal scale of me 2 days ago at the grocery store buying a bag of chips and then just demolishing it in the car, making sure my wife doesn't see that I ate an entire bag of chips on the way home from the grocery store.
yeah,
And this like wild thing erupts out of like what's supposed to be like a nice controlled zone is
mm.
like my car. Put the key in,
Yeah, yeah,
drive, keep it full of gas. But that is the place where I binge eat. And it's
yeah,
like, why am I doing that?
yeah, yeah. Sort of, yeah. All these different elements. Yeah, we're more complex than we think sometimes, and like, Yeah, sometimes I think even with this birth rate stuff, we're more complicated than we think. Like,
Mm.
I don't know. People are very apocalyptic, but I tend to think, well, this is very early days. We have not plumbed the depth of our natural reaction to this kind of problem. Um, yes, there could be surprises in store, one way or the other. What was it? But also, the part of the nature man thing is connected to like somewhat the secular social order, because it's not
Mm.
true. Because secularity is about control. It's about like, well, but it's a control in combination with the grand we. So like, it's usually actually secular humanism, right? So you can sort of think whatever you like, as long as you think that every human is, equal and has infinite value and is the ultimate purpose is to like prosper humanity, right? So like generally it's not pure sort of pragmatism, whatever that means. It's like pragmatism in the end of humanity defining the grand we. So you've got all these people saying, oh, we need to go to Mars. We need to, stop making so much carbon. We need to do all of this stuff. And like that assumption of the we is part of like the assumed social order, I think. But also maybe the part that's coming under question a bit. Because it's sort of like, you guys in America, you sort of went overseas and you're like, okay, you guys need to get with the program. You need to like become a secular democracy. You need to do all of this sort of stuff. And it's like we're going to prosper your humanity by making you care about prospering humanity. And then some people went, well, basically, I don't really want to do that, or something. And then it's like, well, if somebody doesn't believe in the we, how can we have the we still? And like that question is echoing around a little bit. Like the sort of the loss in confidence after Afghanistan, maybe. It's like, all these people online are talking about Muslims and Islam and stuff. And to some degree they've got a point. They don't have to agree with like the structure. But at the same time, it's not true to say, I think, that secular is just the same as any other structure. There is a strong element of minimalism in the sense of like, actually, that's the interesting question. I don't know how you're going to be able to interact with this, but I'm not sure. Like, if you have the grand we, right, what that means is the secular realm is the stuff that we control. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to fix my car, but I'll feel embarrassed if I pray for my car to be fixed in public because we know how to fix cars.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if it was more individual, there'd be no shame in praying how to fix your car because you don't know how to do it, right? Like, but since we know how to do it, it's expected that, like, oh, I'll just, submit, send it to somebody else or something. Somebody will know how to do this. I'll use the group connection to solve this problem. And where was I going with this? I'm not sure. Oh, lost my train of thought.
Okay, good, because I can pick it up from there. Because when I was in high school, I spent some time in Poland and in Nicaragua.
Oh,
And when I was in Nicaragua specifically, um, the things that were prayed for were so different from the things prayed for in America because the we was very different in Nicaragua than it is in America. And I began to wonder what would happen if you like prayed for healing? Because in Nicaragua, people
yeah,
get healed by prayer.
yeah,
And in America, I don't even think about praying for healing. It's certainly not the first thing I do. The first thing I do
Yeah.
is call 911 or go to the hospital because the hospital is the place of healing.
Yeah. And you only pray if they're like, this operation has a 50% chance of success. And then you pray, but not before.
And like, I'm not against going to the hospital. I don't think I would even like, if we finish this conversation and I go upstairs to my wife and find her like passed out, I think I'm probably going to drive her to the hospital really fast.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to stop and pray before I do that.
Kill and eat. So I got. Wait, that's maybe the wrong. I don't know. No, wait, yeah, that's. No. That could be interpreted more long ways than right ways.
Yeah, especially if you watched the TV show Pluribus recently.
Oh, yeah.
It's like at the end of the we, that's where God starts.
Yes.
And like the large, the larger the we is, the smaller my God was. Like in my own personal life, like as the we grew in my life, God kind of shrunk.
Yeah.
And these days,
as I'm on
this quest for the holy Techne, I'm thinking a lot about what would it mean to make God bigger.
Yeah.
Like does the royal we shrink? And like what?
It's sort of a lie. You have to fracture it. So like,
what do you mean by that?
Like, just because something exists potentially doesn't mean it exists in like a more direct way. Just because somebody somewhere knows how to fix my computer doesn't mean that like I know how to do that, or I know how to find that person. Like, or I could afford to pay them, or like it's worth the hassle for me to do that, or any of these things. So like, yeah, like it's more just an awareness of the different groups you're in and how much control they really have. So like, how much control do I actually really have? And then like I think consecrating your laptop, I liked that idea, right? It is quite a good example. It's very imminent. It's very close. It's sort of like, what's it? What am I talking about? Yeah, no, I'm like, yeah, starting to lose the trains of thought a little bit. Well, maybe I'm getting tired, but yeah, we can go on further.
Well, I kind of want to circle around and grab a few things as we approach the ending of this, because the royal we is behind the dam.
The dam of what?
Like when the river gets dammed, that's the royal we. Like there is no small we. Like the small we builds a bridge. You know, the small we does things in partnership with the river.
Yeah.
The royal we harnesses the river and exerts control over the river.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of it is sort of like recognizing the separations between you and the royal we, right? Like what would happen, like just as a thought experiment, if you consecrated your laptop in a public place, right? Let's say, like in terms of functional things, I was thinking about it a little bit, you know, because Ross, he had a good point where the more mundane something is, you have to make sure that you keep if something is large, you have to make sure that it stays holy instead of making everything mundane. Like, are you going to make the holy mundane, or are you going to make the mundane holy? Which means consecrating a laptop, which is fairly mundane, would be fairly high effort. You might need to re-pray over it every time you use it, for example. Because if you only do it once, you'll just get used to it again. So you could so let's say, you go to a cafe because you want to do some writing in a cafe for once. You pray over your laptop, you make the sign of the cross over it to consecrate it, and then you open it up and start typing. And you're sort of commissioning the art or the work to be blessed where it lands. I think that works because you're not in control of how it's received in some ways, right? Especially with writing.
No.
Yeah, so you need a bit of the divine touch onto your hands or onto the computer, let's say, so that it can you want the Holy Spirit to help guide what you're doing, right? And shape your attention in the ways which you aren't sure of which way they're going to go. But yeah, I think it could even make sense to I could even imagine an electrician or somebody doing that. I'm going to bless my tool truck or something.
So I was talking to the oboe player at my Anglican church recently, and she was telling me how she spent, I think it was 6 months getting her new oboe ready to be played. Wow. And it was every day you blow a little air in it, and then you blow a little more. And it's this very, very slow process. And the oboe has to learn how to hold air across time. And if you do it too fast, it'll crack and break. And when the oboe was ready, she brought it into church, and the priest consecrated her oboe. And I was standing there looking at her this is you got a consecrated oboe? I didn't that never crossed my mind that someone would bring their even a musical instrument set apart for worship and for communal holy worship, that they would have the tool be blessed by a priest.
Yeah.
And I was how do you see the world, oboe lady? Because I'm curious about that. I think maybe I want to see the world like the oboe lady sees the world.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about, is what would it mean to bless a tool truck?
Yeah. Yeah, I think partly you probably have to be fairly Protestant, because you're going to have to bless it constantly because it's kind of going into contact with the mundane so much. But also I think you start at your point of almost highest intent, or I'm not sure if this is a universal rule, but let's say you start at the point of your highest strength, right? If everybody's a servant king, you sort of you'd dedicate the most intent to the thing you're the strongest in, or the thing that your best skill or your best ability. Thinking about blessing the laptop or the oboe. I tried blessing my mind or thoughts or something when I went off to something the other day, so I could it was my eyes or tongue or something, so I could say and think, see the right things for that time. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a thing we do in Anglican church where just before the gospel is about to be read, we do the Old Testament, a psalm, an epistle from St. Paul, and then the gospel reading. And we have this big gospel book, and it's brought into the center of everyone and read from the center, and everyone turns to face the center. And then just as the person's announcing like the passage that's going to be read, we do like a little sign of the cross on our minds, our lips, and our hearts. And I kind of like that. I was even thinking about like doing logic was just be like, bless my mind, bless my lips, bless my heart. And it's like all these little liturgies, because I'm in the process of becoming Anglican. I grew up in like mega church evangelical land. My life is starting to take on like liturgical feel. And it's very strange when the liturgy like follows you home.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah, so making the world sacred. I think that's a good thing.
I think it's seeing the world as sacred as it always is, or like waking up to the sacredness that was in front of you the whole time.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because like
Sure.
we can't make a tree sacred. I don't think.
I think if you sort of set it up, you know, you put up a little fence and you decorate it and you have like, I don't know, making it sacred. I see. I mean, true, because in the sense we're not using it for anything. If there's a tree you're using for something, you could maybe make it sacred. But if it's just sitting out there among all the others and you're not using it, I guess not. Because it's sort of like it's changing how you interact with it, or like it's changing how you interact or perceive it in some way, you could say.
So this is the question. In the act of putting up the little fence, putting decoration on it to make the tree sacred, is the tree becoming sacred, or is our perception of the tree becoming sacred? Because I don't think the treeness of the tree is changing. I think that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I think so in the Christian structure, you rely on the Holy Spirit, right? So like if I make something sacred, it's through the power of the Holy Spirit. But I could deceive myself into thinking something is sacred even if the Holy Spirit didn't do it. And so like there's this sort of ambiguity where I guess a tree is an example. It sounds very pagan. We think it's very unlikely that the Holy Spirit would be on board. So then it would sound more like I'm deceiving myself. Whereas our work is very biblical, you know, do everything as unto the Lord. What's him you're serving. We think the Holy Spirit is more likely to be on board with that. But that's because of we're expecting to channel the Holy Spirit's power, as opposed to thinking we just have that power regardless of the divine. Probably. Although if you have a different sacred social order, you know, the holy person could just have the power, right? So if the shaman says this is a sacred tree, everyone's going to go, okay, it's sacred.
Yeah. Yeah, this is probably my final thought, and then if you want to go anywhere else, let me know. Because I'm again thinking about the second verse of Genesis, where like the Holy Spirit hovers over the unknown, the endless sea of chaos, and then brings order to that, and creation begins. And then like through the Spirit there are trees, and the trees have seeds, and those seeds then continue on, and the tree in front of me is only here because of the creation from the Spirit in the Ancient of Days. And it's like, I can do everything I want to make it sacred, but this thing has been sacred from the beginning because of the work of the Spirit. I guess I'm trying to wake up to that all around me and see the work of God that is
Yeah.
in the gaps I have filled with the secular modern world. Okay, that's my tying of the bike.
Okay. Yeah. So that's sort of like, yeah, trying to. Yeah. No, I get it. It's beautiful. So like going back and looking at it with fresh eyes, sort of like trying to, sort of like like a baby, you would look at it being born again to the wonder, and sort of not necessarily buying into the to sort of the declaration that everything is mundane, but at the same time,
Everything is spiritual.
yeah, yeah, I think I'm happy with this. I think it's just you just have different sets of eyes, right? Like like the blue light lens, to bring it back around to that. Sometimes all you're doing is seeing how blue is this thing, and you can do that, right? You can ask how blue is this thing of anything, and then sometimes you sort of like, you know, sacred, how wondrous is this thing? Is maybe perhaps wondrous is a better word than sacred for everything, because
Mm.
if sacred means like a division, it can sort of um it could be confusing if everything's on the same side. But yeah, but you seeing everything as wondrous is, yeah, like good. Gaining those eyes, or if not all the time, gaining the ability to do that when you want to, right? Because sometimes, you're like, wonder is like being awestruck. It's sort of, wonder is like receiving from above with both hands, right? That's sort of like awestruck, amazing, this is incredible, this is beyond me. It's the sort of the transcendent above coming down. Yeah, and it is great. But then the human is in the middle. So at other times, you go, well, I'm going to start. No, now is the time to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to like, going to, yeah,
I think
it's
that's pretty
sweet.
rad. Um, is there anything else you want to cover, or are you ready for the final question? How are you feeling?
Um, there may have been things, but they're sort of gone now. So yeah, it's all getting sort of blue. Oh wait, actually no, there might be one more thing. Maybe I can
Let's do
squeeze
it.
out one more thing. Um, it was just trying to bring up this question of meta social order, right?
Hmm.
Because you have your social order, you have the way you've structured all these bits and pieces, but then you have this other question, like, but it's not all of your social order is sacred usually, right? Like usually you have some, or often you have some things which don't seem that special. Like if someone ties their shoelaces the other way, a lot of people won't care. But if you like sacrifice your goat the wrong way, a lot of people might be very upset. But then,
Yeah.
yeah, but you can sort of have like firstly, just is this thing eternal? Is there a true correct way to slice an apple that we haven't discovered yet? And so like a one speed eternal thing, there is one proper way to live that we're trying to find? Or is it like there's a 2 or 3 speed thing where only the sacred part is eternal and you can slice apples however you want and that'll keep changing? But there is exactly one way to sacrifice goats, or that like there is exactly a specific number of sacraments and there's always been the same number, we just disagree? Or do you sort of take this meta question of, well, is it changing in all aspects? So you could either use dispensations, or you could even be saying like the number of sacraments is, depends on the Holy Spirit, right? Like, should I follow a fourth sacrament? Well, I will pray to the Holy Spirit and find out. And so, like, even the sacred part of the social order is up for sort of like, you don't see it as unchangeable in some ways. Yeah, like, it's sort of like the question of eternity. Like, how permanent do you think the social order really is? So the question is, the sacred social order is itself part of the sacred social order, which makes it a meta question or a recursive question. So is the sacred social order in the sacred part, or is it eternal or not?
I mean, it wasn't eternal for me. I spent 25 years following God and like very seriously, and like a lot of the Christian things that my fellow Christians said they did but didn't do, like I actually did them. Not all of them, but like I got pretty close.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't enough. I still lost faith.
Yeah.
And then I had to like build a secular social order.
Wait, so what do you mean by that? Was it like in the Pentecostal thing, you were doing all of the things that they were doing, and it just didn't?
No, I mean, like, so I lost my faith at about 25 years old. That's when it started.
Yeah.
Like, I was a virgin. I didn't have sex.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the big ones that like
Yeah.
all my friends
The big
did that.
They all
And
said
I
you
like
should do that, and then they didn't.
And it's also like the holy thing to do, or like the right thing to do. And I like had a lot of pride that I didn't do the really hard thing. I figured out how to not do it.
Yeah.
And so like my faith was not like I mean, you could say that's like a purity culture, and to a degree it definitely was, but my faith was like a very lived thing. It was embodied, and I helped people. Was I also a party to like emotional manipulation? Sure. Yeah. Was I also a party to like talking about hell and scaring people? Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But did I also like talk to addicts and see healing and watch miracles happen? Yeah. And then I still lost faith. Like I did all the right things. I was a perfect candidate for never losing faith.
Yeah.
And I lost faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then I didn't have any worldview. I had no way to navigate reality. Every question you asked me, I would answer from the Bible. And it went pretty quickly towards suicide because I was like, I have to ask this. Like, there was nothing left. So it was like
the inevitable questions. You have to ask them. You can't answer them. And so you just keep... you get stuck asking them over and over again. Yeah, like, what is justice? Like, well, you ask it. It comes up again. You ask it again. It comes up again. You ask it again.
So I spent 8 years finding answers, or at least finding things useful enough to go on living. And then about a year ago, I had a mystical experience that I found to be undeniable. And I found myself facing a question of like, am I going to return to service of the Creator God? And then what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
And it very much, thinking now, like I'm a year back into being a man of faith. this month I've been thinking a lot about Jonah
Yes.
and being swallowed by the whale of salvation, and then after some time in the darkness and some kind of mysterious transformation that only happens in the underworld, I got spit back up on shore against my will.
Yeah.
And then it was like, all right, kid, there's work to be done. So get after it. It's like, well, what is that? Like,
Yeah.
what do I do now? And so now
Yeah.
it's like, I have a sacred social order, I guess, but I've had more than one. And
Hmm.
in some ways, my secular social order was more useful than my sacred social order, because my secular social order, I could ask any question, whereas there were lots of questions I couldn't ask in the first 25 years.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, what do I do now that I have a meta sacred social
Yeah.
order?
I think part of what I'm just, I think God likes to break our sense of control. One of the problems with having a fixed sacred social order that we know, like I know what's going to do, I know what's expected of me, I know everything, I know right from wrong in every sense, is that you can invest pride into it in the worst way, right?
Mm.
Like, pride as in dominion. This is my glory. And like you don't have to give it up to God. And so whenever we get these sort of structures, I tend to think that I think that God is metaphysically committed to imbuing every graspable thing with mortality. So that any
Mm.
time we feel in control of something, that God can make fun of our sort of hubris, basically. Anytime we feel like we're actually in charge, God could just like completely overturn it. And so I guess that's why I tend to think that every speakable, translatable, communicatable order or part of the sacred social order is up for overturning in some sense. Because if you can speak it, you can be proud of it, and if you're proud of it, God is committed to making fun of your pride.
Yeah. And that makes me think a lot of what Jesus was up to, was like flipping the tables of people's sacred social orders.
Yeah, and
And it
where it
was,
leaves, yeah, where it leaves logic is in the realm of the apophatic regarding the divine. It's about negative definitions. You can't really say this is exactly what's going on, but you can say, well, this isn't really what's happening. So you never really get control over it. You just like the open hand or the closed hand. You can never get around it. But you can sort of partition bits off so that it's still up there.
mm. So then where does this leave us with poetry?
Don't know. I think you can point with
No,
poetry. Is
no,
like,
no, no. Wait, no.
yeah.
I think that was the right answer.
Oh, I don't know.
Poetry just is the unknown. Poetry is the I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It has elements of sort of. It's, yeah, yeah. It has lots of elements of that. Yeah, it can incorporate the unknown. Right? Poetry can include the unknown in it.
Yeah, if logic moves us towards the known, poetry moves us towards the unknown.
Yeah, maybe.
And now we're back to where we started.
Perfect.
Uh, You got one more thought brewing, I could tell.
Oh, I'm just thinking the known and the unknown is another way of talking about power or control, I think. If you sort of, I think, yeah, like knowing something is more power, unknown is more often, but yeah, it's the same thing I've been saying about.
Wait, but knowing something is power, and then what's the other one?
Unknown is sort of out of your grasp.
Yeah, it's funny because that word grasp or snatch, like that's the word used when Adam and Eve take the fruit.
Yeah,
And then that word is a design pattern across the whole Bible, and all different kinds of things are
yeah,
snatched and grasped at.
yeah.
And I feel
Like,
often like the thing that I'm grasping at is probably the thing that I should be letting go of and letting remain an unknown. Or
yeah.
the thing I want to grasp most is the thing I should allow to be a mystery.
Hmm. I think what I'm trying to do is in some ways the complete inverse of that.
Of course it is.
Yeah, I think I am trying to grasp everything that can be grasped, so to prove how little can be grasped. So to comprehensively define things in the most understandable, rigorous way that can be done, to show how little that actually is.
I love that. I think that's worth doing.
Mm.
Well, are you ready for the final question?
Yes.
So, Samuel, you and I have been on a quest for the Holy Techne, or just for Holy Techne.
Yeah.
And the final question is: did we find anything holy in the last hour and 47 minutes and 28 seconds?
I think we pointed at it, or we. Oh, I think I was talking about you can't. Did we find it? Maybe we found where it isn't. I don't know. Find something. Who's the wonder? I think we talked about liking the idea of sort of blessing things in the world. And I think there's a little bit of holiness in questioning the dominion of the grand we. Like that's not as clear cut. Like it doesn't make that. It's sort of. I think that is a type of grasping at eternity, and it's sort of. I don't think the grand we can hold exactly. Not in its current form. Yeah. Yeah, but I've got no complete answers. I'm not a poet.